Hey, poddies. It is that magical day of the year. They call it Friday the 13th. I am so excited to be bringing you an episode today with one of my amazing clients and somebody that I've been so fortunate to work with over the last couple of years in different capacities, actually. Today, I'm bringing the lovely Nadine Powrie onto the podcast. Nadine is an executive and leadership coach. She specialises in helping leaders manage difficult conversations and actually grow themselves as leaders with lots and lots of different techniques. I'm bringing her on the show today because I think we can get very caught up in talking about leadership online, and we can get very caught up in thinking about what leadership is, but not necessarily actually know, if that makes sense. So that's one of the things that I'm going to be talking to Nadine about today. The other thing is that Nadine is a client of mine who has done phenomenally well this year. And I think it's actually really good to hear from the horse's mouth, as it were, exactly what they found, what these crazy people who've worked with me, what they found, has been the most difficult parts of actually going forward and moving forward with their business. And Nadine raises a really, really interesting point today about one of the major difficulties that she has faced in her business, and gives a really different insight on that, which I'm really excited for you to hear. And also what the breakthrough moments are and where things start to get a bit more fun. Now, I am incredibly honoured to have Nadine on the podcast today. She's somebody that I've really, really enjoyed working with, and she's just celebrated her first six-figure month, which is absolutely phenomenal. She's not one to blow her own trumpet, but I certainly will do it for her. And I'm so excited for you guys to listen to today's episode and to get all the goodness that is leadership from Nadine, ideas and insights on how to be a better and more reflective leader yourself, and also to think about the business that you want in 2020 and how to make it happen. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I've enjoyed recording it. It really is a good one. Well, poddies, I'm very excited and actually really, really honoured and privileged to welcome the lovely Nadine Powrie to the show today. Welcome, Nadine.
Good morning, Jess. I'm really, really excited to be here. Actually, I feel honoured to be on your podcast because I have been listening to your podcast, and back to 2 years ago, I thought, I love what she does. I'd love to be on her podcast. This will never happen because she doesn't know me. And then we met at Janet Murray's event, and you sat at the table, and I thought, I have to find ways to work with this amazing woman. And here we are today. So I'm really excited.
I'm like sat here blushing, for those of you who can't see me. But no, I'm so excited, and honestly it was such a pleasure meeting you, and I'm so glad Janet introduced us, because it was through, I think it was Media Influence Live, wasn't it, that we met?
Yes.
And it's a phenomenal event. I know that Janet's in the process of rebranding it and things, but as a speaker, it was one of the best events that you could speak at, because you actually got to meet the attendees. And I remember you having these amazing questions, and you were like, right, I want to know the answer to this and this. And it was brilliant, because a lot of the time people go to events and they don't ask questions. They'll go and they'll hope to learn something, but they won't put their hand up and actually ask, because they worry that it makes them look silly, or it makes them look like they don't know something. And that's one of the things that I've always really liked about you. But it's no surprise, because you actually specialize in helping leaders deal with managing difficult conversations.
Yes.
So that's a big part of it, I'd imagine, like asking questions and really digging into issues.
Yes. But also I'm very curious, and I always want to know more about people. I am genuinely interested in people and in how they think, and in how we can learn from each other. And I remember at that conference we did the round table, and you sat opposite me, and I was bombarding you with questions, and I got a lot out of it, I have to say. And I never left you since, because I then registered to be part of the Dotties, and then part of Evolve program, and I also did your podcast course.
Yes, you did. And you've got a phenomenal podcast as a result. And it's so funny because for those of you who are technologically challenged, there are literally no people in this world that are more technologically challenged than myself or perhaps Nadine. And we have both managed to create podcasts. So I'm just going to throw it out there. It is possible for you, even if you don't like technology. Scott covered a lot in there and in ways that makes it really, really simple. But no, I'm so thrilled to have you on today. And I'm really thrilled because we're going to be talking about your journey kind of evolution, and given that you joined Evolve, it was an appropriate title, really. So you just take us back a couple of years when you first started listening to the podcast and just talk about like where your business was, what you were specializing in then, because it looks quite different now.
Yes, it does. I mean, if we look back to the very beginning, I was a head teacher, secondary head, and there was a successful head, and there was a moment in my life when my father passed away. And before he passed away, he said to me, he said, you know, you're doing a lot of long hours. You need to think about yourself and perhaps, you know, review what you're doing. And that led me to think, well, actually, yeah, I need to rethink about that. And then I had a conversation with an HR director because we were talking about the things you like doing as a head teacher and the things that you do not quite like doing, like, you know, refurbishing the toilets in a school, you know, things like that. And at that point I thought, well, actually I love coaching people because I've always developed a culture of coaching people in organizations where I've worked. And I thought, well, if I had a blank piece of paper and if I could do anything that I would love doing, it would be focusing on coaching. And then when my father passed away, it made me rethink. And I thought, well, actually, I would love to do that. And I had long conversations with my husband because, you know, it's a massive risk to leave a job that is, you know, secure to something new where you're starting back from scratch. And I've no qualification in being an entrepreneur. You know, all my qualifications are about leadership, management, education. But I decided to go ahead and to set up my business in 2016. And it went, I mean, it's just been an amazing journey. And I think I met you in year 2, at the end of year 2.
2017 Media Influence Live. It was a sunny August. Actually, it wasn't sunny at all. I'm lying. I turned up and I definitely had wet shoes because it rained.
There we are. Okay. I remember that it was the second year of my business, and people always say, well, you know, it's very difficult to set up your own business and business go burst after a year, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, well, I don't think so. I think if you've got a good business model and then you know what you want to achieve, you know, I've managed 15 million budget, you know, 350 people. I thought, come on, I must be okay setting up my own business. And I did, and it's been very successful, you know, doubling my turnover every year, which is quite phenomenal.
It's been huge.
And I've expanded. So I started working in the UK and then expanded quite quickly in the Middle East and then working in Asia and then Africa. So I'm kind of on all continents now, and it's very exciting. But I would say it's really thanks to you and the work that we've done, Jess, to be fair.
Well, I appreciate that, but it's also been down to your hard work. I mean, so when you started in the Dotties, you were doing a lot of work selling to individuals, and you were doing a lot on social media, and you were really producing like quite a lot of content and things. How did you find that? Like, how did you find it producing content and, you know, putting it out on social media? Did you find that it worked for you, or that, you know, it was helping you build better relationships? Because I think it's one of the first things that we teach people when they set up an online business is go and create lots of content and give value. How did it actually work for your business?
Yeah, I mean, I actually did that with a lot of rigor. So I remember getting up at 5:30 in the morning because I would never auto schedule anything, because I like to write in the moment and I like to write about what's happening, and I like to write live, if that makes sense. So I'd never allow myself to schedule, which is pressure number 1, you know. So I would get up at 5:30 in the morning, I'd do Twitter, and then I would do my LinkedIn. messages. And yes, LinkedIn brought me business. There is absolutely no doubt of that. Twitter, less so. I had conversations on Twitter. I had a lot of followers, but nothing there was happening in terms of bringing, clients to me. Everything was happening on LinkedIn. So what I decided to do this year is to actually close my Twitter account and to invite, all of my followers to meet with me on LinkedIn, because I think it's best to have one platform and to do it well, as opposed to being on different platforms, which requires you to have different messages, because you're not, because on Twitter, I think it's 150 characters or something like that, so the message you're writing there is very different to the message that you are writing on LinkedIn. And the problem I have as well is that I love writing, I love talking. And I was massively struggling to write something, in 150 characters. So I thought, well, let's go with my strengths and let's focus on LinkedIn and let's just produce, content on a daily basis. And I did that for the past 4 years. But this year I have reduced to 3 posts per week, mainly because I'm extremely busy. I don't really think that if I don't post on Tuesday or Thursday, it's going to make a massive difference. But I really want to put out quality content. And, if you're trying to go for quantity as opposed to quality, I think it does affect the way people see you. So I do 3 posts a week. I post on a Friday, I post about my podcast. And that is really bringing me lots of visibility. Lots of people are talking to me. I think so far I've got 876 downloads, which is really good because it's less than a year that I did the course with you and Scott. So I'm very proud of that. And I can see as well the themes that are, where people are most interested in. I've invited guests on my podcast and it's been a huge success because those guests have offered different perspective on different themes that I would not necessarily talk about, but it's always focused on difficult, courageous conversations. So, I've had guests talking about sales, talking about change, talking about this morning, returning to work after maternity leave. So the topics are broad, but what brings them together is always the difficult conversation / courageous conversation. I mean, I've kind of evolved those difficult conversations because people said to me, well, from the moment you said difficult conversations, we think that they are difficult. And actually, no, they're not difficult. It's just everything is in the mind. And it depends how we go about it and how we perceive those conversations. So I've renamed them courageous conversations. And so I talk a lot about courageous conversations on social media, and I share the research that I do because I'm currently doing some research. I'm just starting a PhD. So at the moment, it's just, research, nothing else. And I love sharing with people the research. However, I also love sharing, case studies. Also, I have to respect confidentiality of my client, but I think it's important that I bring some real elements into what I am publishing so that people can think, oh yeah, I feel like that. And yeah, I do have that problem. Okay, so I'm not the only one to fear courageous conversations, because actually people are terrified about those conversations.
Well, it's really difficult. It's really difficult to have a conversation, especially if you're not naturally somebody who's good at people management. It can be really challenging to have a difficult conversation and to do it in a way where everybody leaves, and not everybody always is going to be happy after a difficult conversation, but at least everybody leaves knowing what their next steps might be or how the situation is going to be resolved. And I think it's so interesting because when we set up online businesses, a lot of people think that it's very much about, how can we get people to know, like, and trust us? Yeah. And when we do that, one of the things that people often mistake is that they'll think getting people to know, like, and trust us is about not having difficult conversations. It's about everything always being positive, everything always being a yes, everything always being like this kind of cheerleading effect. And that's what I really like about what you teach. And, we'll talk about how that's kind of transgressed in a bit, but what you teach people is that there are ways to have those difficult conversations that actually help people gain more trust in you. and that help people, you know, feel happier about working with you or happier about resolving the situation, even though the situation isn't perfect. It's not the conversation that kind of ruins the relationship. And I think that's really, really powerful.
It is, it is. And what I want to say as well is that I don't teach to over prepare for difficult conversations, because that's the danger, that you over prepare and then you have a kind of framework in your mind, and you come to meet with, you know, whoever you're meeting to have that conversation, and then things don't go according to plan because you've over planned the conversation. So I'm interested in a system that is a more balanced system. I call it the NP framework, where I help the people who are working with me, I help them construct effective messages. It's when you have a conversation with someone, it's always about your perception against their perception, because it always starts from perception or assumption. So we talk about, you know, my knowledge, your knowledge. We talk about my understanding, your understanding, my thinking, your thinking, my feeling, your feeling, my intention, your intention, my observations, your observations, the potential objections, and that's really important, but the potential objections from my perspective, and then thinking about, okay, so what could be the potential objections from their perspectives, because they're very different people. So they will see the world in a very different way. So they will think differently, and therefore they will raise objections in a different way. And then the potential questions that I might need to ask them, and that they might want to ask me. So I'm interested in having a framework where people don't over prepare, but think about what could happen in that conversations. So I work with clients. We work on role plays, because I think that, you know, like children learn by doing, by role playing. And
really important, I think, to actually get practice. Like, so many people, I think, worry about role play because they have those awful visions of when they perhaps worked in the corporate environment and you kind of had to sit there in front of like 30 people and, you know, do something that really was awkward and uncomfortable and wasn't real. You knew you'd do it differently in a real situation. But role play is invaluable, especially with what you do, you know, especially if you're talking less about like, here's a script, because scripts, you know, real people never end up sticking to them. You know, their perspectives and perceptions will always be different. But if you're doing this like framework piece, then it must be really important to actually get the practice in before you go and do it in a real life environment, whatever that looks like.
That's true, and that is why before people engage me to work with them, I always do a questionnaire about the kind of difficult, courageous conversations that they are having and the difficulties that they are having around those conversations. I do that, but I've always been interested in HR. When I was a head, I did a postgraduate degree in HR with CIPD, and there is a forum actually on the CIPD website as well. So we were able, you know, while we were doing our dissertation, to actually see what people problems were. And they're always the same problems. You know, people are always struggling with some specific subjects. How do you tell people that you're going to be restructuring? You know, how do you tell people that they keep being late? I mean, you know, topics like that, which seems at times trivial, like being late is not, you know, it's not a big topic in a way compared to announcing a restructuring. Actually, for some people, that's really difficult. And therefore, it's about having the courage and to give them the confidence to have that conversation and to remove the barriers that they have in their mind, because, you know, by then it's the imposter syndrome that they've built them, you know, they build a story in their head where they completely cannot have that conversation. So it's about going deep into the iceberg, below the surface, and making sure that we deal with all the barriers that they have set up, you know, in their own heads, and so that they can have that conversation. And actually, it doesn't have to last long, you know, and it can be done in a very effective manner.
And out of interest, like, how do you feel that your background, because your background has always been, you know, wherever you've worked and whatever you've been doing around having these difficult conversations, how do you feel that that kind of prepared you for sales in your own business? Because arguably a lot of people think that sales conversations are really difficult. They have the same feelings around them, in that they can build them up and feel like it's going to be a lot of pressure. They want people to say yes. They're scared about objections. They're scared of rejection. There's a lot of crossover whenever I hear about your work, and I think about the way that people worry about sales conversations. Do you feel like having that background made sales conversations easier for you, or do you think sometimes having that awareness made it a little bit more challenging?
I think for me, it's made it a little bit more challenging at the beginning,
Okay.
because I'm not a salesperson. I've not studied selling or business as such. So at the beginning, it was probably a little bit challenging for me. But I guess, in my heart, I have passion about what I do.
Mm.
I strongly believe in the work that I do, and I know that I am making a difference with the clients that I'm working with, because of the outcomes and because of the impact that our conversations are having on the job that they are doing, on the organization in which they are working. So that's giving me the confidence, and organically, if I may say, to actually sell the work that I am doing. And I mean, I think now I don't really sell to people. I'm being referred, people are talking about me and then contacting me, sending me emails and saying, we would like to work with you. So it's actually people who are now coming to me, as opposed to me, ringing some people and saying, would you like to work with me? Or I always felt awkward to ring people, particularly, people you don't know. I mean, but now it's completely different, because my business is successful, and because people know me more, people come to me, and it's a very different kind of conversations. I'm very relaxed about it, to be fair. I draw business proposals, but they are responding to what people want, because in the conversations that we are having, I'm listening to what they need. Because every sales, in a way, every sale is different. So what I'm interested in is resolving their problem as quickly as possible, and so within a time frame, and we go from there. So my sales cycle actually closes very quickly now, where in the first year of my business, I'd probably wait 2 or 3 months to have a response from a client. Now, within less than a month, the response is positive. In fact, all the business proposals I've done this year have been positive, but at times I've actually learned to say no, because I think it's important that there is a match between yourself and potential clients, where that you can work with them. People want certain things that actually you can't make happen, and I want to be very honest with them. And sometimes I'm not the right person, because actually when they talk to you, they think they want something, and then what they want may not be what they need. And I know that some other coaches, particularly in the network where you and we are working in, I know that, some of them would be probably more appropriate than me to talk about, menopause, for example. I mean, I'm not menopause at all, So there are some people that I could put forward, and I've done that. I think it's important.
That's so important. I
Yes.
really like that you've brought that up, because I think it's a huge thing. I want to take it back for a second, because you mentioned there that, like, in the first year of business, conversations took a lot longer to close and things like that. And then this year you've been on fire. I have never seen anyone close so many proposals so quickly. It's ridiculous. And just to put it into perspective for you guys, like, Nadine has gone from working with individuals on this to working with major companies, and has, gone from working one-to-one or having like small groups of people primarily as a business model, to actually working with really awesome corporate organizations, where typically people think the sales process takes a lot longer. So what do you think, or what has changed for you? What was like the breakthrough moment for you? Because there's a real difference in the Nadine I knew sort of 2018 and what you were doing then and how you were selling then, and the Nadine 2019 who has just celebrated a phenomenal month, and has been signing corporate contracts like they're I don't know, like you're a person giving out sweets in a playground. I've never, I've never seen anything like it. It's amazing.
I think what has changed for me is the discussion that you and we've had around business proposal and around writing the business proposal. Because I'm very good at listening to what people want and understanding what they want. I was perhaps less good in turning that into a business proposal that was short to the point, because, you know, the people who are receiving the business proposal, they don't have time to read 10 pages. And I think I was writing too much, too many, you know, it was too wordy. So the work that we've done together has brought me back to having a simple system. It doesn't have to be complicated, and I love simple. And I'm always at my best when I am back to being, you know, simplicity. So it's about 2 to 3 pages long, and it's really about looking at the needs, but also looking at the impact and how you're going to make that happen. But, you know, not in details, but looking at the impact of what you think is possible to happen over that period of time, you know, and using testimonials as well from people, because I've always been, there's that part of me that is a little bit shy about, you know, advertising myself, and I have testimonials, but I've always thought, well, why would people want to read that, you know, I've done this and I've done that, but actually, you know, in the world that I am working with, testimonials are key.
They are huge. And you're somebody who, and I don't know whether this is a European thing. It's something I see much more often with clients I work with in Europe, where there seems to be this kind of like, I don't know, unknown or unwritten rule that if you share testimonials or if you talk about things that you've been really good at, that you're bragging, or that it makes you arrogant. It seems to be quite a European way of thinking, because I know a lot of my clients and my community in the US, you guys are amazing at this. You guys are like, I've done this amazing thing, like everyone needs to know about it. But here in Europe, people are a lot more reticent about using testimonials and about talking about the things that they're really, really good at.
I think you're right. And I mean, you know, I'm French, and I don't know if it's my culture or if it's my personality. Maybe it's a mix of both, you know, but I know that I'm not particularly, or I've not been particularly great at putting forward those testimonials. I mean, I can see on LinkedIn that people are, you know, advertising themselves and showing, you know, showing the good words that people have written about them. And I don't do that very often. And there is that part of me that thinks, well, actually, you know, what's preventing me from doing that? Because it's nice to show people what you are doing, you know, and the impact that you're having in this world. So I'm putting them more out there, but I'm still a little bit shy. But in my business proposals, they are there, you know, and if you go onto my website, they are there. I think it's easier for me to put something under people's eyes than actually to talk myself about it. So yeah, maybe it's that French culture. Maybe it's a little bit of me and who I am and my DNA. You know, I've always been quite modest about my success. You know, I like celebrating the success of people, but perhaps I don't really celebrate, or I don't really, you know, show enough of what I can do. I've improved on that, but it's not something that I do too often.
And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because it is, in a way, I guess, like celebrating your own success is, I don't know, I'm just thinking about it now. It's almost like having that difficult conversation with yourself. And,
Yes.
and giving yourself that reassurance around, actually, you know, it's a good thing. It's a good thing to tell people that, you know, you're owning something, that you're really proud of something. And I think it's so interesting. Maybe there's an episode for your podcast there. I don't know.
You know, one thing that I've thought I've done, which was actually easier, is on LinkedIn, I would publish at the end of each month what I would have achieved, you know. And that's not a testimonial as such. That's not saying I've worked with Nadine and she's great and blah, blah, blah. It was just, you know, a list of achievement. And actually, that was quite nice for me to do, because I love reflecting. I love reflecting on what's worked, you know, what's been quite tricky, what have I had to change, to tweaks, you know, reflecting on the new people that I am meeting. Because I think over the last 2 years, I've put more emphasis on, when I meet someone, I think that person can give me something. I can borrow from that person's talents, right? And I systematically reflect on that. And it's easier for me to reflect and actually, use a testimonial as such, which is quite interesting when you think about it.
Really like that. I really like that. And that's something you actually are teaching now. So Nadine has launched these amazing notebooks, the NP notebook range. That's what I'm going to call them. I'm like, I don't care what anyone else is referring to them as, but you've launched this range of notebooks, and it's for leaders, and it is designed to kind of help them in 5 minutes a day do the kind of 360-degree leadership activities that we probably don't do anymore, and I've had some really good discussions with you about this, because as people move on, and I guess this is applicable to people who work in organizations and people who are running their own businesses, as you move forward, you get less feedback. And it's really interesting because we thrive on feedback, and people are really good at, if you get a constructive piece of criticism, you can do something about it. If you get praise, then you can feel validated that you're doing the right things.
Yeah.
It seems like what we're doing now almost is, the further ahead you go, the fewer pieces of feedback you get, because nobody wants to give you feedback, and it can be quite a scary process. And so you've developed these really cool notebooks that are designed to help people get that reflection, but not in a kind of, I don't know, in a kind of like self-flagellating way where everything is, oh my goodness, I must be terrible because I do all of these awful things. You've done it in a way that's really cool, that genuinely is designed to ask people the right questions to help them understand, how can I set myself up for the best day? How can I, make the best use of my time? How can I have better conversations? And overall, how can I become a better leader? And I think that's really, really interesting. Can you talk us through like why you created these? Because you're signing all of these huge corporate contracts, and you're signing multi-5-figure corporate contracts, and then you've brought out this notebook, and it's, what is it, £40 now, I think, or something, and it's out there in the world, and it's a lower ticket offer, but it's doing these amazing things.
Yes, so the reason why I designed the notebook is because I work with leaders who are very busy. They go, they arrive at work, they've already got lots of things to do, lots of post-it notes on their computers of what they have to do throughout the days. And they've got, when you look at their Outlook calendar, it's back-to-back meetings. And when I was asking them, so when do you take time to reflect and, to take some time for yourself and, to really focus on what's happening to you as a leader, they tend to respond to me, well, I haven't got time to do that because I'm too busy, as you can see. And I think that it's not a problem with time management. I think it's an issue with habits, because I think that great leaders, they need to have great habits. And when I created that notebook, I wanted I wanted the task to be short and sharp and just 5 minutes a day, right? Something that everybody can achieve. And it's an incredibly small habit to change, just, borrowing 5 minutes of your busy day. So I wanted those leaders to reflect on one aspect of their leadership. And this is why in my notebook, I have some thought-provoking coaching questions, and there is no order. They can pick up the questions that they want to tackle on that day, and there are some blank pages. They can even write, a question that is coming to their mind depending on what has happened to them. And I guess what I want them to do is develop a habit of being consistent. So everybody, they arrive to their desk, and the first thing they do is they take my notebook, look through the questions, choose one, and just focus on that question for the day. It can become a goal for the day, but also it can become a roadmap, because sometimes, the travel will take a little bit longer depending on the challenge that they have. But by taking the time to reflect on what they are doing, they'll become a much more strategic leader and not reactive leader, because that's what's happening. The leaders that I'm working with, they are very reactive. They're reactive to crisis because that's what they're dealing with. And I just want them to step back a little bit and to press pause and to make time for themselves, to think about what they are doing, to think about the impact that they are having on their teams and also on the stakeholders, and to make sure that they have clarity on their decisions, and to raise their confidence in ensuring that they are identifying their own needs as a leader, and not straight away, starting their days almost blind and going into meetings without really knowing what difference they're going to make that day. Because sometimes they get lost with the agenda and the meetings, and I often ask them
all of the time, and you kind of, and even as a business owner, I think we're all guilty of this. We jump straight in, I mean, it's a Monday today, for example, when we're recording this, and I don't know about Nadine, but I know that I'm certainly guilty of, on a Monday morning, sometimes I'll just jump straight in, right? What tasks need to be done, answer my emails, get involved with this, that, and the other, instead of just taking that 5 minutes. And when I was working a corporate job, they would always say, oh, we'll do that on a Sunday night. And I think, God, I don't want to do it on a Sunday night. That's my time. And that's what I love about your notebook, is that because it's designed to integrate into the working day, the results you get are actually reflective of the thoughts you're having then and how you're framing them, rather than just, like you say, this reactive firefighting attitude.
Yes. And values are, I'll share something with you, because I've already given out some of my notebooks, and people have bought my notebooks. And one of the pages that they tend to start with is the page about the values.
Ooh.
Quite interesting, right? Which I think is a great way to begin with when you are thinking about self-reflecting. And in a way, it completely matches my own values, because one of my values is resonance, right? And I think that everything I do in my work starts with my client. It starts with the leader who is driving change. And this is about their situation, this is about their challenge, their ambition, and their journey. So it's all about them. And what they are doing when they are working on my notebook is they are starting with the values, which is all about them, really. Because if you have some strong values and if you understand what they are, then I think it will help you be a better leader, if that makes sense.
You've got to know yourself in order to be able to lead others, kind of thing. And that's so interesting that that's where people are starting with your notebook, knowing themselves so that they can lead better.
Yes. And also, I believe very strongly in individuality, that every person has scope within them to be remarkable. And when I talk about strengths to the leaders that I work with, they're often a little bit stuck, because they are looking at the glass is half empty, as opposed to the glass is half full. And I am reminding them that everybody has talent, but not everybody knows what their talents are. And not everybody is using their talents to best effect. So it's about reminding you, okay, where are your strengths actually? And what difference are you going to make today using those strengths?
Yeah. 100%. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. This has been epic. And I know that people are going to be so interested in how they need to move forward and manage difficult conversations. I guess I have one final question for you, because I think sometimes it's easy to look back on the journey, and I do this all the time. I look back on my business journey and I go, rose tinted glasses, and I'm like, oh, it's all been brilliant. It's just been so great running a business, and it's been wonderful, and I don't know why more people don't do it. But I'd love to know, if you could share with the people who are listening, what has been one of the most challenging things that you've had to overcome being a business owner, and then what has been your greatest achievement so far? What do you think has been your greatest achievement?
Okay, so the first question, I would say, to deal with the rapid growth of my business.
That is a problem. That really is. Everyone always goes, oh yeah, well that must be a nice problem to have, but actually that's really tricky. That's a really tricky problem to have.
It is, because I'm at the point where I am fully booked. You're talking 2020, 2021, 2022. It's getting very busy, and yeah, people think that it's great to grow, but I didn't prepare myself to grow so quickly. And therefore it's about looking at what can I delegate, to whom, because I work on my own. There is no one else. So I've had to look for people that I can delegate. So for example, my podcast, I have a podcast team that can help me, because at the beginning I was doing everything myself, right? Editing the music, and And I thought, I'm spending hours doing that as opposed to preparing, the work that I am doing with my clients. So I've learned to delegate and to find the right people to work around me. So there is a small team around me. So I've got a virtual assistant. I've got a podcast person who is helping me, and I am looking at launching online courses in 2020 because I've been asked to by companies, because I can't be everywhere at the same time. So I'm just thinking at the moment, okay, so how can I make that work? Bearing in mind that, it's on me. So that's the first thing. I guess my, the biggest achievement for me is, I guess it's every year my business is doubling.
Which is a very nice place to be. We like that a lot.
It is. And I think that I am quite proud of the risk that I have taken, because I've taken the right risk, but I've also known who to work with. And I mean, I've worked with you, Jess, and I think that, and that, I want to continue to work with you because it's about trust. When you have a business, it's about letting people in your business and trusting them that they want the best for your business as well. And that's really, it's difficult to find. There's lots of people out there promising you the world and they can work with you, and I am difficult to be convinced about when they want to work with me. So it's about finding the right people that can continue, who can help me continue develop my business to where I want it to go for the years to come. So yeah, that's where I am at the moment. It's a nice place to be, but those are difficult questions for myself. It's not, it's not because the business is growing that it's easy and all very happy, because you have to make sure that you continue to satisfy your clients. I mean, I've applied for a trademark, which is evaluate, elevate, and accelerate. And I want to make sure that in everything I deliver, it's within that process. Yeah. So it's how can I continue to grow my process, so that it aligns with the trademark that I have, because I want to do things well. I want my clients to be happy. I want them to change their organizations, their team, the world. And I want to leave a legacy in the world. So yeah, that's kind of me, really.
And I'm so proud of you. I really am. It's one of those things where sometimes I think people feel like, the hardest businesses are the ones who are struggling, and, when things seem like they're really difficult and when they're not making money and things. But I love that you've shared so honestly about the fact that having a growing business, it's not just about what you're actually doing, but making sure that delivery stays consistent, and also mentally preparing for success. I think that is a huge thing, and coming to terms with the fact that actually success, when you get there, can feel very awkward it's kind of like wearing a pair of new shoes that pinch for a while. Yes. Especially if you've experienced it so rapidly, it can be a scary thing. It can be, so all these people out there who are kind of hoping for a six-figure business overnight, like, what I would say is that one of the things that is actually quite nice sometimes about seeing your business grow steadily over time is that you get that ability to prepare, and you get to feel at every stage, all right, okay, I'm growing and this feels good and it feels safe still and it's secure. When you grow rapidly, sometimes that can be really, really scary to do. And I think there's always that part of you that thinks, right, I need to keep this up. And that's the thing that you're doing so well, is that you're delivering this amazing service to your clients, you're delegating, you're running your podcast really well, you have a new family edition, which is also amazing, and you're fitting in a PhD. You are the kind of epitome for people who are out there saying, I'm too busy or I don't have enough time. Like, Nadine is somebody that you should be looking at and perhaps grabbing one of her notebooks and starting to reflect on where you could make that time, because she honestly does more than anyone I've ever met, and has fully earned the business that you've created. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you so much. That was really nice to hear.
Well, there you go. If you won't share your own testimonials, Nadine, like
do that again anytime.
Luckily it's recorded. You can listen to it whenever you're having one of those days. You can be like, well, you know what? But no, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey. Seriously, I massively appreciate it. I know everybody else will find it so interesting as well. where is the best place for people to find you and kind of find out more about these amazing notebooks that you've got?
Well, on my website, www.nadinepowrie.com, and everything is there. Or on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I mean, every day something's happening anyway. So LinkedIn and my website.
Perfect. There you go, guys. If you are a leader, future leader, aspiring leader, or working in an organization where leadership needs a little bit of an overhaul, make sure that you do get in touch with Nadine, and make sure you do connect with her on LinkedIn. Her content over there is really interesting. And you also get to see sometimes a sneak behind the scenes of all the awesome hotels that all these companies are putting her up in. I'm very jealous of all of those, by the way.
I am back in Dubai on Friday.
Oh, I just have to live vicariously. See these amazing suites that they're all sending you to. It's lovely.
Okay.
Amazing.
Thanks for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And thanks for what you brought in my life.
Wow, I always appreciate you. Don't make me blub on a podcast. That would be terrible. So there you go, Poddies. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure you go and connect with Nadine over on LinkedIn and check out her website, nadinepowrie.com. And I'll see you on Monday for another episode.